Motivation can be understood in two ways in the context of applying for a professional program: your motivation to study the course to which you are applying, or your general ability to motivate yourself and others. For the CASPer, you should consider the second meaning. It is likely to involve someone who is struggling with their motivation who needs your help to get back on track. Or it can involve a quote in motivation and allow you to immediately approach motivation from a more personal angle. Let's look at a typical motivation prompt. Your friend Sarah has recently been finding university life very difficult. She comes to you and explains that she is thinking of dropping out. Now, let's consider three questions that might follow such a prompt. What would you say to Sarah to help her in this situation? What kind of problems could be leading to Sarah lacking motivation here? Provide an example of a time when you motivated yourself or others. This is a fairly straightforward set of exemplar questions that ought to serve as a good base to prepare from and develop a structure for. The first question allows us to interact directly with someone else and attempt to motivate them. The second question requires us to provide context and is therefore reliant on personal reflection on the topic of motivation and having read around it. The third question requires that we have a well-structured, personal example of motivation that shows our real-life ability with this attribute. We'll look at the first and third questions here. Remember that these are exemplar questions only, and that the real exam may have a different format. However, being prepared for a theoretical motivation situation and having a real-life motivation example ready to go should set you in good stead for the CASPer. Let's look at the first question. What would you say to Sarah to help her in this situation? We should ensure that we speak to her in an empathetic manner that allows her to share before we look to provide her with information. Begin the discussion with open questions that allow Sarah to share what she is currently struggling with. Empathize with her as appropriate and ensure that she feels listened to. Address each of her problems or concerns in turn with a calm and logical approach. Draw on your own experience to illustrate how you are finding the motivation to progress through the course. Position yourself as being on her side throughout. Remind her of the reasons that she signed up for the course initially, and emphasize these. Does she still feel the same about these factors? Work to understand whether her core motivations are the same as before. If not, then try to understand other possible motivations for her. Conclude in a manner that draws together the points that you've addressed, shows that you have listened, and that you have given thought to her problems and what could drive her now. Let's look at the third question. Provide an example of a time when you motivated yourself or others. You should have a brief introduction to the event that sets the scene. Provide further context that explains why motivation was necessary, who was struggling, and why. Explain how you explored the situation with them. Show that you worked to understand what they were struggling with, or what you were struggling with. Showing empathy is vital to motivating someone else, as they are unlikely to listen to advice that fails to accurately address how they are feeling. Someone that feels that their friend or colleague truly understands their position is much more likely to listen to them and in turn to derive motivation from what they say. Explain how you motivated them. You might have explained to them that you had the same or similar problems, for example, and how you overcame these. You might have chosen to focus on their strengths and how deserving they were and remind them of this. Ensure that you are clear on what tactics you employed. Provide a conclusion that explains how your efforts were received, and crucially, that reflects on the situation and what you learned about motivation and your own ability to motivate.